Hello, and welcome back to this week's new reading vlog. This year I wanted to challenge myself to do more themed reading vlogs because I'm such a mood reader. I also want to cater to some other types of viewers and have something themed. I had 2 books out from the library that I was like, hey, I could save these for the same vlog, and then later found 2 other books to also go with this theme. As you can tell from the title, in today's vlog I will be reading books about refugees. I have 4 books, or rather 3 novels, or rather 2 novels, a non-fiction type of memoir, and a graphic novel. The first book, the graphic novel, is going to be Unaccompanied: Stories of Brave Teenagers Seeking Asylum by Tracy White. This is about 5 teenagers fleeing from their home countries of Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Guinea. I think one story includes 2 teenagers and their stories, based on extensive interviews with the refugees, lawyers, caseworkers, and activists, so they aren't necessarily about like one single person. So it's a little bit fiction but mostly rooted in truth. The other book that I have out is Against the Loveless World by Susan Abulhawa. I waited so long for this from the library, so I am really excited to finally have this. I heard that the writing is absolutely beautiful in this. It's about a story from an Israeli solitary confinement cell. Next is a book by Malala Yousafzai. It's called We Are Displaced: My Journey and Stories from Refugee Girls Around the World, similar to Unaccompanied, except in like a full novel form as opposed to a comic. Lastly is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta, Sepetys, and I know that this author is very big on historical fiction. I've never actually read anything by this author, but I've definitely heard her name around a lot. I believe this is about Nina, this one girl. She and her family are being hauled away by the Soviet secret police from Lithuania, and then they are shipped off to Siberia. These are the books that I will be reading in this vlog, and let's see my thoughts. I just read the first book for this video, Unaccompanied. This is based off of a true stories or true stories. The library does categorize it as non-fiction. This is following the story of, I think, 4 to 5 teenagers and their journey into immigrating to the US as refugees. It's really hard to believe that these are all really young people, young kids. Well, not kids, but, well, actually, yeah, because they're under 18, and what the hardships that they're going through to survive, and sometimes the immigration system can reject them, and there isn't a lot of research that goes into what happens to them when they go back and what kind of protections that they have, which is probably little to none, especially people who are running from gangs, which did happen in this. I think that the work that Tracy White is doing in showing this as a way that's like easy to digest in a comic is helpful and really important, and it also highlights visually the things that they're going through, their trauma. The author's proceeds from the sale of this book is being donated to organizations that support unaccompanied refugee minors and immigrants. To donate directly, you can go to traced.com/unaccompanied. I think this was a really great way to start out. It is true stories, but they're based on extensive interviews that this author has done with other refugees, lawyers, caseworkers, activists, and trying to get more information on this experience and trying to make it as authentic as possible. There's also a glossary because there's a lot of like legal terms, a lot of government departments that are mentioned in this. Hello! I'm getting dinner started right now, and I'm letting water boil for pasta. So in the meantime, let us read. I will be sitting right by the stove, okay, safety people, and checking it periodically. But now I'm getting into my next book for this vlog, which is the one that's overdue at the library. So sorry. I want to be able to finish this book in 2 days, so today and tomorrow, my 2 days off. I'm a little bit behind because I was reading my other book. I was finishing that for a different vlog, but it's like 7 p.m. I would like for it to be 50-50 because I do want to get things done tomorrow, so I don't know how much time I will have to read. Roughly, let's say this much. I will be reading, I should have said at the beginning of this, Against the Loveless World by Susan Abulhawa. It comes with a glossary at the beginning. Look at this author photo. Is that not so sweet? Can you tell her dog has 2 different eye colors? Oh my goodness. More author photos with pets. Yes. Beautiful, sharp-tongued Nar tells her life story from an Israeli solitary confinement cell, recounting how she went from working in beauty salons to being locked up as a political prisoner. The US invasion of Iraq makes her family refugees again. Displaced and bewildered in Jordan, Nar travels to Palestine seeking a divorce from the man who disappeared on her. This powerful novel presents a searing and unique portrait of a woman who refuses to live with shame or to be anyone's victim. We love strong women out here. I didn't get exactly to the 50% mark, but it's okay because that was on purpose. I wanted to finish one portion because I think page 180 would have been right in the middle of this part. I still have a little bit of the way to go. I'm like 38% of the way through. It is a very quick read in terms of like the writing style. The subject matter, however, is quite heavy. Please someone school me on how her name is pronounced. I think it's Nahar. It means river in Arabic. I looked up the pronunciation, but it sounded like there were more letters, so I'm not 100% certain on what it is. But she has a few different names as well. It obviously is separated in a few parts because Nahar at the beginning is held in the cube, which is solitary confinement in, I believe, Israel. She is recounting her life from working in the beauty salon to, I guess, and then we'll figure out what happened in between before becoming a political prisoner in Israel. She is an abandoned wife. She got married at a very young age, so by 20 she already has like no husband. He totally left her. She's trying to figure out if she should get a divorce, and she gets tricked into working as an escort to raise money to really support her family. She's the only one able to do so, and she wants to be able to send her baby brother off to university, which he's always worked really hard for. He's very smart, he's very excited. When the US invades Iraq, her family becomes refugees again. They get kicked out of Kuwait, where she essentially grew up. Her family came over from Palestine, and there is a really big Palestinian population in Kuwait. With the US invading Iraq, the Palestinians are being kicked out again, and they head off to now Jordan. I guess now in the new part that I am, they're trying to figure out if they're able to get paperwork and head back into their homeland of Palestine, a place where she has only ever heard about from her grandparents. It's a country that her mother has not been in for 25-30 years. She's able to move with her family, and it's kind of like step by step of what's going to happen. She feels a lot of things. She definitely was in support of Iraq between like the US, and she felt that Saddam Hussein saved her life and really changed the course of her life. It's all hatred for the US. She has her reasons. There's a lot of things that's going on in her life. There's a lot of trigger warnings for this book. She also was sexually assaulted, verbally assaulted. There's just a lot of things that's going on in her life in order for her to make ends meet. There's like blackmail involved, so it's a little bit hard to read. It does flip back and forth here and there from her perspective in the cube. She says that she has gray hair, she's old, she has people visiting her, reporters. There's like propaganda about how well she's treated and whatnot, but her family is unable to visit her. I think that the writing style is, like I said, very easy to read. I think the writing is very beautiful. It is a little bit of a tough read in terms of the content. She is out here surviving. I got a letter from my friend Samantha. First of all, so cute. And this beautiful postcard is from the International Rescue Committee, which I thought was kind of fitting for this vlog. I've read quite a bit, and right now she's kind of like in the middle of this rebellion, smuggling type of situation, and I guess this is why she is now a political prisoner. You really can see how it is Israeli versus Palestinian and how little regard there is for like the Palestinians and any rights that they may have in their own homeland. The country, from what I can see, is split up into two different parts. There's like the one where the Israelis are. It's like gorgeous, super rich. The homes are so nice and giant. And then the land for the Palestinians is super ugly and run down and very crowded. There's also different license plates to distinguish who can use what roads, and obviously the Israelis have more access to the nicer roads. They're all paved. The Palestinians have, I think, yellow license plates that they can only use on some of the roads, and they're usually not official. They're very like rocky and dirt. There's definitely a lot of high stakes. Not that Nahar doesn't really know what that's like, but this is definitely a new type of risk for her. She has like this new budding romance, I think. You learn a lot about Nahar's life, but I feel like there isn't a lot to really, not necessarily connect, because there's a lot going on in her life where you might sympathize or, for lack of a better term, like pity her, but she doesn't really need that. I feel like she would totally punch you in the face for saying that. She's a very tough woman because of the circumstances in which she had to grow up, but I don't really know how I feel about her as a person. I'm on the last part and I have like less than 50 pages left of this book, but it's really dragging. Nothing's really happening. I feel like there was so much more that was going on at the other parts, and especially at the beginning there was more to learn about her. But now that she's like kind of settling down, it's feeling a lot more lit-fic. It's getting really boring. I'm finding myself reaching for my phone a lot more, so it's taking me longer to finish this than I would have liked. I finished Against the Loveless World. The beginning of this was doing it for me. I was genuinely enjoying it and learning more about Nahar's life, where she would end up, what she did to end up in solitary confinement, right, the cube. But the ending, when she ended up being in Palestine, it was really starting to drag for me, and I really felt like this wasn't really her life, or like her character was kind of changing. I felt like she was being a lot more arrogant and aggressive, and she was kind of turning into this different person. The conflict of Israel and Palestine in this is very black and white. I don't know how I feel about that. Because I enjoyed the beginning, that part gets a 4. But the ending, I was getting really bored, gets a 2. And so I think my overall rating is somewhere in between. Obviously, is going to be a 3-star. Sorry to whoever was waiting for this on hold, but I was able to finish the last 215 pages of this. I succeeded in finishing this book over 2 days. I'll head on to reading the next book, second book down. I can feel my eye is getting a little bit better, but I think I'll be keeping my glasses on for a little bit more. I did start reading We Are Displaced by Malala Yousafzai. This is the other nonfiction book that I have. It's quite short though. It's also catered to YA, so I don't think it should take me that long, which is why this is going to be my like reading at home book. It does include some photos at the end. This book is split into 2 parts. The first part is going to be about Malala's life, why she ended up as a refugee, why she's displaced. And then the second part is going to follow the stories of 11 girls and their story of how they ended up being displaced as well. Malala Yousafzai is the author of this, and she experienced visiting refugee camps and then made it into a story while also exploring her own story. She is also sharing the personal stories of these girls that she's met on her journeys visiting other refugee camps. I didn't get to read too much of this so far. I think maybe I'll try to fit in a few more pages before I like have to leave, which is like honestly now, but I've only read like 15 pages of this. I finished the last little bit of We Are Displaced this morning. I'm not reading it, it's nonfiction. Reading this was really eye-opening and scary. It made me really think about my current way of life and not to take it for granted. A lot of these people escape, those who are lucky enough to get asylum and start a whole new life for themselves abroad, have the second chance. Some of them go to stay with family who they have never met before and are not even fully taken in from them and are like kicked out of those homes as well. Each of these young girls left everything that they ever knew and are surviving and thriving also. I loved reading the end of their dreams, just like little bios about them, about where they are now, what they're studying, what they want to do with the rest of their life. I really loved reading this. I really actually enjoyed this and taking my time with it and reading from their personal perspectives. I really enjoyed. I'm at Coda's place right now. I'm reading Ruta Sepetys Between Shades of Grey. This book is actually super easy to get through. I'm already on page 187, so I'm like, I want to say a little over 50% of the way through. It's obviously very sad. So this book is taking place during World War II. This is regarding Stalin. Russia, or I guess the USSR history, is invading Lithuania. The Germans are pushing back to help them, but Lena's father is a professor at the university, or like a provost or something. He has a high position and he has spoken out against Stalin. I think because of that, he's being taken, or his family's been taken into these labor camps. They've been taken to Siberia. There's a map at the beginning that shows like their journey from Lithuania to Siberia. It shows also like the days of how long it took to get to each location and where they ultimately ended up. It says they also will end up in the North Pole. There's a lot of death. I wouldn't call this a refugee story. I like looked up books about refugees when I decided I wanted to do this, and this book did come up. It's more of a book about being displaced. It's definitely really sad and it's historical, but I wouldn't call them refugees because they're not escaping somewhere. They're being taken to somewhere. They're hostages. Nonetheless, I'm getting through it really quickly. I'm enjoying my time reading this terribly sad book. I don't yet know how I feel about it regarding like my star rating. It's definitely not anything less than a 3 right now so far. Easy reading. It is YA and you can tell. I don't know if there's supposed to be some sort of romance between Lena and Andreas. I don't know if I'm feeling that, but they're all trying to do what they can to survive. Finished Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. I like fell asleep on my commute, and then I woke up and then I finished it and I arrived and it just, timing was perfect. Enough left to read on my commute, but also time to sleep. This book was really easy to read. It has very short chapters, which makes it seem like an even shorter book. And I read in the author's note later that the author decided to write this because of their family connection. They're Lithuanian. I believe their father or their grandfather was in the Lithuanian military, and survivors of the Soviet occupation feel like their story has been forgotten. It's been all about Germany, Hitler, the Nazis, the death of Jews, obviously, and many Lithuanian Jews were also killed, but they feel like their part of the history of World War II was forgotten, and so she wanted to do her part. She wanted to do her part in keeping their story alive and talking about this part of history. A lot of Lithuanians after the Soviet occupation were displaced, and they came back to a Lithuania in which they found Nazis have stolen their identity, they've stolen their home, their land. They even kept this a secret from the Americans, what they were doing. I'm giving this 3 stars. I felt like after a while I was really unsure of what was going on, and I kind of wish there was more of an ending. I didn't love the ending that it had. It felt a little bit too clean. It tells you what happens, but I just feel like it was such a huge jump from the ending of the book to the epilogue. I don't think that it really fit into this prompt that I'm doing, this theme that I'm doing, but I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I got to experience Ruta Sepetys, especially since I've been wanting to read more of historical fiction. I used to read so much more. This concludes this video of reading books about refugees, even though one of them was just a historical fiction. I had an interesting time with this. I will definitely be keeping an eye out for more stories. I think I will also be keeping an eye out for these girls and seeing what they are going to do with their lives now, and reading Malala's actual biography, her memoir, that has been on my TBR for quite some time. And I will see you on my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!